Tonight, President Obama makes a pivot to Asia as he begins a tour in the Pacific in support of U.S. allies. Plus, pro-Russian gunmen in Ukraine admit they are holding an American journalist missing since Tuesday. We'll have the latest.
I'm Brian Patrick. Finally made it to Rome to join our EWTN Rome correspondent, Alan Holdren.
The festivities have just begun, and we're going to take you to the first event.
Celebrations not just in Rome, but worldwide. I'm Jason Calvi. I'll bring you to one place preparing for major celebrations this weekend. Coming up.
Those stories and more ahead on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, April 23rd, 2014. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Wyatt Spencer. We begin tonight looking at news now. President Obama is in Japan today, starting a tour of 4 of the closest allies to the United States in Asia. He started it off by assuring Japanese leaders that they have U.S. support in a bitter territorial dispute with China. It comes as the Obama administration says they want to make sure they're keeping a focus on regional issues in the Pacific. Obama told a Japanese newspaper that a group of uninhabited islands in the East China Sea fall within the scope of a U.S.-Japanese security treaty, which means the U.S. could step in if there is a military clash. The president's week-long tour will also take him to South Korea, Malaysia, and the Philippines. And now to some of our other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Pro-Russian gunmen in Ukraine have confirmed they have captured a U.S. journalist reporting in the country and are holding him because of his reporting. A State Department spokeswoman says U.S. authorities are deeply concerned and see this as a violation of agreements reached by Russia and Ukraine last week. The journalist for Vice News, Simon Ostrovsky, has not been seen since early Tuesday. Pro-Russian insurgents have confirmed that he is unharmed but is being held on suspicion he's a spy. Ostrovsky has been covering the crisis in Ukraine for weeks and was reporting about groups of masked gunmen seizing government buildings in eastern Ukraine. Could it be a clue to the missing Malaysian jet? A piece of sheet metal with rivets has washed ashore in southwestern Australia, but right now officials are not optimistic it has any connection to the missing jet. Still, Australia's Prime Minister says the search isn't over. Officials plan to bring in more powerful sonar equipment and continue to comb the search area in the Indian Ocean. South Korean authorities say they will not begin lifting the wreckage of the sunken ferry while there is any chance of life inside it. Today, officials explained how the rescue is becoming more difficult as divers must rip through cabin walls to retrieve victims. Giant cranes have been waiting on site for days, ready to cut up and raise the submerged vessel. But the government has warned that the work might eliminate air pockets that could be sustaining survivors. 156 bodies now have been retrieved, but nearly 150 are still missing after the ferry sank a week ago. A Kansas judge is allowing the soldier in prison for leaking classified documents to WikiLeaks to formally change his name from Bradley Edward Manning to Chelsea Elizabeth Manning. An Army spokesman said he remains confined in a male unit as he serves a 35-year prison sentence. Manning has been diagnosed with gender identity disorder by Army behavioral specialists that typically disqualifies one for military service, but Manning can't be discharged while in prison. The survival of the California teen who stowed away in a flight to Maui has raised questions about airplane security in addition to airport security. The aviation community is puzzled over how the boy survived the journey. At a repair shop for commercial jets in Southern California, this is the underbelly of a Boeing 767, just like the one the boy stowed away in. General Manager John Day says the wheel well where he hid is only about a foot large, surrounded by a massive landing gear and tires.
You'd have to kind of be slumped over almost like this to survive once this door opens and once the landing gear comes out. And if the plane hit any kind of turbulence, I mean, it'd be like riding a roller coaster without a seatbelt. My theory is it's a bit of a miracle. I mean, there's almost no oxygen at 38,000 feet, freezing cold temperatures, 50 degrees below zero. It's a miracle.
The 16-year-old boy hopped a fence to get to Hawaiian Airlines Flight 45 on Sunday. New research finds a link between people's religion and their sexual activity. The Religion News Service reports on the study by sociologist Mark Rigneris. He also is behind the controversial study that says children of gay people fare worse in life than children of straight couples. Rigneris presented his new study on sex in America at a Southern Baptist conference this week. According to Religion News Service, one of the findings, only 10% of Mormons say they had premarital sex with their spouse, but for younger evangelicals, that number is 50%. The full results won't be released until September. A bill that would legalize assisted suicide in England and Wales is currently in the British House of Lords and will be debated in the coming weeks. Catholic Bishop Mark Davies of Shrewsbury, England, issued a warning during his Easter morning homily this past Sunday about that legislation. He said the proposal, quote, would change long-established laws which uphold the sanctity of human life, and he says put the weakest in society at risk. English law currently punishes assisted suicide by up to 14 years in prison, but the new law would allow doctors to prescribe lethal doses of drugs to seriously ill patients who request them. And Arina Grossu is the director of the Center for Human Dignity at the Family Research Council. She speaks and writes frequently on life-related issues, including assisted suicide. Arina, one Catholic bishop was so concerned about this issue that he devoted part of his Easter sermon preaching against it. What here is at stake with this issue?
Well, it's the defense of human life. And we've seen this attack on human life from the unborn all the way to the end-of-life issues. And so it's just another way that the culture of death is trying to take over. And so it's important to protect the most vulnerable. And the people who are most vulnerable are the elderly people, the ones who are sick, the ones who are dying, and also ones that are suffering from illnesses that they will never recover from.
So more specifically here, with the UK's scenario here, after many years of, criminalizing assisted suicide, why do you think the tide has turned in this country and in general?
Well, I think other countries like the Netherlands and Belgium that have such liberal euthanasia and assisted suicide laws are changing the shock value in those countries. And so I'm not surprised that the UK is also hopping on that. But when we look at the Netherlands and we look at Belgium, we see that it's not just euthanasia and assisted suicide, but then that there's death squads that come around, and there's also other systems in place where the unborn are not safe from getting killed as well. And so there's a slippery slope, and we could see that, and it's taken place. And so it's a cause of great concern.
Just turning back here domestically to the U.S. as opposed to necessarily Europe, what's going on here in the U.S. with it? Because I believe 3 states allow assisted suicide. So
Oregon, Washington, and Vermont have legalized assisted suicide. Vermont just passed it May 2013. Montana, it does not have a legalized assisted suicide, although a lot of people think so. It's more of a consent protection for a doctor. But there are other threats locally. There's threats in New Jersey, in California, in Colorado. There's a story out of Texas about a family who let a little Natalie Newton die of dehydration. And so there are threats, and there are groups out there that are working, lobbying in these states to make assisted suicide legal in those states. And one of them is Compassionate Choices, and that's the Planned Parenthood of the assisted suicide movement in the U.S.
Wow, so there's definitely a lot going on. So thanks so much, Arina. We really appreciate your coming here and filling us in on all of this.
Thank you.
The Supreme Court says victims of child pornography have the right to fight for restitution, but there's a catch about exactly how much. The High Court threw a ruling out from a lower court today. That lower court said one viewer of child pornography should pay $3.4 million to a victim. Justice Kennedy wrote that the man wasn't responsible for all of the victim's losses. A federal judge will now figure out how much that man should pay. The Vatican is releasing the Mass booklet, which will be used for Sunday's canonizations of Blessed John Paul II and John the 23rd. Here's the jacket cover for the booklet, which includes background text on both the soon-to-be saints. It's 104 pages. It's been translated, in addition, in 4 languages. And the canonization celebration will be taking place around the world. Our Jason Calvi kicks off our Two Saints Forever team coverage tonight. He joins us from here in Washington at the Pope John II Shrine.
Wyatt, I'm standing in what on Sunday will become the National Shrine of St. John Paul II. You can see construction crews hard at work to transform this place. They're expecting over 1,000 people this weekend to come to celebrations, and to tell me a little bit more about what's going to be happening here. We're joined by the chaplain of the shrine, Father Gregory Grossu. What's happening this weekend, Father?
Well, we are going to have a veneration of the first-class relic of his blood-soaked cassock of John Paul II from the assassination attempt in 1981. That'll be out for veneration for the general public, for the Christian faithful who come here, through the time that he is declared by Pope Francis to be a saint of the Universal Church, at which point we will bring out the liquid blood of John Paul II for the first time for public veneration here. We also will have a midnight mass, and we will have a 10 a.m. Mass of Thanksgiving after our sign unveiling of the St. John Paul II National Shrine. We'll have a number of events for young adults. We'll have a coffee house. We'll have a Eucharistic procession in the footsteps of John Paul II through this local area. We will have another coffee house after the midnight Mass, and with plenty of opportunity for sacrament of reconciliation and adoration of the Blessed Sacrament.
Sounds like a great weekend, great celebration of this life. And this center that we're standing in right now will become a permanent church. This is just a temporary church. Tell us, what are the long-term plans for the shrine here?
Well, ultimately, there will be world-class mosaics of Father Marco Ivan Rupnik. This church will seat about 550. We will have a reliquary chapel for the veneration of the relics that we have of John Paul II as well. We have a 16,000 square foot exhibit called A Gift of Love, the life of St. John Paul II, that will unveil this summer. And so we invite everybody to tune in to watch those great things happening here at this place.
Can't wait to come. And you yourself were touched by John Paul II. You were walking in Poland when you were a lay missionary there in Poland. How did he inspire you to then to become a priest?
Yeah, I was engaged to be married, actually, so I was following very much in the teachings of marriage and family that John Paul was very much known for. But as I was watching his life very closely, I saw that I really had a vocation to follow in his footsteps as a priest. And so I listened to the invitation that the Holy Spirit was putting on my heart to, give everything up and follow Christ and be a priest of the church. And so here I am.
And thanks for your service to the church and following and saying yes to God. And just one of the millions of people that have been touched by John Paul II, we're here at the National Shrine, which will become the National Shrine of St. John Paul II here in Washington, D.C. Wyatt?
Jason, thanks very much. Jason Calvi reporting from here in Washington. Coming up, we'll check in with Brian Patrick and Alan Holdren in Rome for more on the festivities leading up to the canonization. And Pope Francis is already greeting pilgrims in town. We'll tell you about his weekly audience. You're watching EWTN News Nightly. I'm Wyatt Spencer. As we've been telling you this week, our team is getting set in Rome for our coverage of the canonization of John Paul II and John the 23rd. Let's check in now with Brian Patrick and Alan Holdren, who are there in the Eternal City.
Yes, Wyatt, we're here. We made it to Rome. It's great to be here with our Vatican correspondent, Alan Holdren. Alan, I noticed a whole lot of people around St. Peter's Square, but it didn't look like anyone was working at the Vatican.
About the only people that are working right now are journalists like you and me. We've got a Vatican holiday today, which is St. George's Feast. This is, of course, Pope Francis's name day.
But we're only a few days away from this huge ceremony on Sunday. Tell us about the latest preparations.
Well, we've got a lot of pilgrims coming into town. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation ahead of Sunday's events. Last night was the first event on the official schedule, which was a special event at the Vatican Basilica of St. John Lateran. Young people gathered at the Roman Basilica of St. John Lateran on Tuesday night in preparation for Sunday's dual canonization. They entered the basilica through the square named after one of the two saints. Their goal? To get to know the blesseds John Paul II and John the 23rd, who will be canonized together this Sunday.
We wanted to organize an event that would allow young people to get to know these saints, because a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old doesn't know John the 23rd at all, and they know John Paul II very little.
The men who made the case to the Vatican for their sainthood shared anecdotes about them, and a choir sang music from World Youth Day that John Paul II would have known. This event kicks off a slew of festivities for the canonization. And for many who came, it's all part of their spiritual journey.
I think the canonization of Pope John Paul II is just a really special time, and it sees sort of another stepping stone in my own faith. That I started off with him at World Youth Day, and I'm continuing my faith with him with his canonization.
As pilgrims arrive in Rome, events like this one will take place all over the city in various languages. And for this Australian pilgrim, the party has already begun.
Everyone's really happy and enthusiastic, and there's just a real sense of joy
So we've got a lot of excitement here, Brian, and it only gets better from here.
All right, we're really excited to be here, Alan, and look forward to working with you this week. Meanwhile, as the canonizations get closer, there are many fond memories being shared, especially by the people of Poland, of their beloved Blessed John Paul II. This is a man who not only helped to bring down communism, but he was known as an adventurer, a friend, and a counselor.
Karol Józef Wojtyła became not only the first Polish pope, but the first non-Italian pope in 455 years. He was born in the Polish city of Wadowice in 1920. He became a priest at 26 and the Cardinal of Krakow at age 47. He immediately began working quietly to promote political change in Poland, something he would continue as pope. During his papacy, John Paul II brought tremendous pride to the large Polish Catholic community. And recently, his childhood home in Wadowice was reopened as a museum, documenting John Paul II's life from his youth as the son of an army officer through his 26-year-long papacy. He was an avid adventurer and enjoyed skiing, hiking, biking, and canoeing. He shepherded a group of university students on nature trips. Maria Rebicka was a member of that group and shares fond memories with this soon-to-be saint.
Later, when we traveled to see the Holy Father, he remembered it all. In order for him to get away a little from all the important matters, we would purposely sit and tell old stories, and he would always remember and talk about details that even we couldn't recall anymore.
In the museum in his boyhood home, you'll find old photographs showing the pontiff as a child and later as a young man, as well as the pistol used by Mehmet Ali Agca, who made an attempt on the life of John Paul II in St. Peter's Square in 1981. The Pope later forgave him.
I'm an outdoorsman myself. I love hiking and skiing. I just could imagine doing that with a man like John Paul II.
It's really incredible. And you know, the stories that are coming out of so many people these days in Rome are really incredible.
We have beautiful stories to share. We'll be doing that in our Two Saints Forever coverage throughout this week.
I'm looking forward to it, and we're going to be bringing everything we can from here in Rome to you.
All right, Wyatt, back to you in D.C.
Thanks very much, Brian Patrick, alongside Alan Holdren there in Rome. A tulip grower in western Poland has cultivated a special flower in honor of the late Pope John Paul II. A bunch of 27 of these John Paul II tulips will be part of the canonization ceremony decorating the altar in St. Peter's Basilica. Each flower symbolizes 1 year of JP2's pontificate, which lasted from 1978 to his death in 2005. As our correspondent Alan mentioned, Rome is bracing for the arrival of pilgrims for the canonization this weekend. Some media outlets say there will be as many as 5 million people on hand. That's the population of Rome. EWTN News Nightly caught up with the man who organizes big events in Rome to see what he's expecting.
Per questo weekend direi che almeno 1 milione.
I would say at least 1 million people. The number is based on airplane and train reservations. There will even be a ship that will dock in a town near Rome on the coast. Then there are buses that will bring people, and of course residents of Rome who will come on their own.
According to city officials, 200,000 people fit in St. Peter's Square and the street leading up to the square. So that means if 1 million people come, only 1 in 5 will make it to the square. Rome will set up massive screens at other squares for those who don't make it to St. Peter's. And many of those pilgrims and tourists who are already in Rome filled St. Peter's Square today for the general audience. The crowd was, of course, bigger than usual. The Pope toured the square in his Pope-mobile. Like most Wednesdays, he kissed many babies. Today, he also drank some tea and got off the Pope-mobile to talk to some youngsters from Argentina. Francis spoke about the joy of the resurrection and the hope the faithful should have that the Lord is at our side.
It was wonderful. Seeing the Pope's always really, really exciting. It's definitely a historic occasion, and I think that it's definitely going to be one of those things that will be a story that we tell for a lifetime.
We have 2 popes. We have Pope Benedict, we have Pope Francis, and then 2 popes being canonized. What a wonderful thing to be alive for.
And we're going to Mass every day, going to visit some of the churches, and just have a time to reflect with a lot of the people we're with.
Pope Francis holds an audience with the public every Wednesday. Up next, he's known as the greatest writer in the English language. We'll talk about the influence of William Shakespeare on this, his 450th birthday. Plus, a legally blind man can see again thanks to a high-tech procedure. We'll show you how he's using his new bionic eye. Welcome back to EWTN News Nightly. Today we wish a happy 450th birthday to the world's most famous playwright and the man who brought us Hamlet along with dozens of other well-known works. We, of course, are talking about William Shakespeare. A production of the play Much Ado About Nothing, performed 4 centuries after its composition, still captures the interests of a young audience in London. The actors there are not much younger than Shakespeare was when he became an actor and writer for the Lord Chamberlain's Men, later to be renamed the King's Men. But it was through his prolific writing that Shakespeare truly made his name. His histories and comedies like A Midsummer Night's Dream and The Merchant of Venice first appeared during the 1590s. And here at the Globe Theater, a recreation of the venue where Shakespeare's plays were staged for 14 years, his birthday party is well underway.
Every year, every decade, your understanding of Shakespeare is completely new. You know, we now know that Shakespeare is a huge international playwright.
That's right. Take a look at this interpretation of A Winter's Tale by a theater company in Nigeria. It's proof his plays aren't just retooled in college auditoriums. And to give us a little more insight into the author, we're joined by a professor who teaches Shakespeare at Catholic University of America, Michael Mack. Michael, you know, Shakespeare's had such a big influence on so many people. What are some of his contributions to the English language and phrases that maybe derive from him?
No, it's true. He's enriched the language unlike any other author. We have words and phrases that we use every day that we don't even know are from Shakespeare. If you know someone who wears his heart on his sleeve, you may not know that you're quoting Shakespeare. If you believe that there's a method to your madness, maybe you know you're quoting Hamlet, but probably not. Some of the titles of his plays, All's Well That Ends Well, Much Ado About Nothing, people usually know that they're quoting a title of Shakespeare's play when they use those. But there's so many other things that they don't realize are from Shakespeare. The list is long, but since brevity is the soul of wit, I'll stop there.
Nice. Well played on that one, Michael. Tell me, you know, Shakespeare, of course, has an influence on people in so many different countries. What do you think it is that translates about, you know, through time and through cultures and even translating through languages?
No, it's true. In fact, the Royal Shakespeare Theatre is going to launch a 2-year production of Hamlet in which they play Hamlet in every country in the world over the next 2 years. And that will no doubt entail some modifications from country to country. But they really have confidence, and they're right, that this will be meaningful in every country in the world. In Shakespeare's own time, his contemporaries knew that he was a poet, as they said, not for an age, but for all time. And it's all times, all places. He has given us, you know, this body of works that we can use to reflect on ourselves, and those reflections are meaningful in every place and time.
What is it, because you're a professor of this, so tell me, what is it that you think is most compelling about Shakespeare for students that you teach?
Well, I teach college students, and Shakespeare is very eloquent and insightful on the topic of love. And at this age, students are very interested in trying to understand what love is all about. Shakespeare is just a wonderful way for them to gain vicarious experience of the larger world and to learn about things in the classroom through reading a book that will make them wiser when they go out into the world. They'll have seen it before, even if they haven't seen it before.
Absolutely, a lot of influence there. Thanks so much, Michael. Michael Mack, Catholic University of America, thanks so much for joining us. A legally blind Michigan man is seeing something new every day thanks to a high-tech retinal implant procedure. He's one of the first in the country to receive a bionic eye since the federal government approved the surgery. News Nightly's Mark Irons has the story.
It's dark.
Yes, good job.
Roger Ponce can see much more than black and white. He can also see shadows and shapes. It may not seem like much, but to him,
it's priceless. It's worth, you know, it's worth everything to be able to see you again.
Ponce has been legally blind for years because of degenerative eye disease. Now a sliver of his vision has been restored thanks to a bionic eye. The University of Michigan has implanted artificial retinas in 4 patients, including Ponce, since the U.S. Food and Drug Administration signed off on it last year.
It's awesome. It's exciting. You're seeing something new every day.
Along with the high-tech eye comes a tiny video camera and transmitter mounted on a pair of glasses. The camera's images are processed into electronic data that's transmitted to electrodes in the retina.
So it measures your responses.
Okay. The Michigan team is trying to help reawaken Ponce's visual memory by teaching him techniques needed to make the most of his new vision. It's already paying off.
When I stand in front of him, he went, "You've got on light pants and a dark top, don't you?" I mean, he hasn't seen any of that in years. So that's huge for us.
It's huge for his doctor, too.
This is a game changer in the sense that when you have lost all the vision, there now is a treatment that can give you some rudimentary vision.
If that's all I get out of this, it'd be great, but I expect a lot more.
After years of darkness, Ponce is now seeing hope. Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Fascinating story. Thanks very much, Mark. Before we go tonight, fans of late night comedy got a treat last night. Stephen Colbert made his first appearance on The Late Show since announcing he'll take over for David Letterman sometime next year. After Colbert took a selfie on set, Letterman called Colbert always entertaining, the new kid, and my friend. CBS announced that it has signed Colbert to a multi-year deal back on April 10th, 1 week after Letterman revealed that he intends to retire in 2015. Well, we thank you so much for joining us tonight. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Catch us again on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Wyatt Spencer. Thanks for watching tonight. Good night and God bless.